Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Cybersecurity Recruiter Podcast. Today I'm joined by Tim Sewell. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, sir. Thanks for having me.
Good. Yeah, no, nice to see you, mate. For everyone listening, we've been having a few third world problems. My cleaner hid my podcast microphone. I bounced into the studio with Tim and had to say I'll be back in 10 minutes. But I think it worked out quite well for both of us, my friend. I think the extra bit of time helped us both, didn't it, this morning?
Indeed it did.
Cool. But Tim, I'm just going to do you a bit of an intro for the guys and girls that don't know who you are, my friend. If I get anything wrong, feel free to correct me. But you were at Lockheed Martin for around a decade, progressed really nicely all the way from information assurance lead right the way up to chief cyber architect. You were then a chief information security architect for Mayo Clinic. You were then the AVP and Senior Director Security Architect for Lilly and Company. And you recently and currently are the co-founder, CTO, CISO at Reveal Risk, and you've been in that position for almost 7 years. So welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks. Yes. No, that's a pretty good summary.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. No, I'm looking forward to getting into it, mate. Going through that, there'll be people listening that want to progress into some of those positions. There's some fairly heavy-hitting job titles there, so it will be nice to unpack it. But before I do, I start where I always start, which is, who are you? I know I've done you a bit of an intro, but I can never do it as well as you. Who are you, mate, and what do you get up to these days?
Yeah, so I would characterize myself these days. I'm a cybersecurity executive and advisor. And as you pointed out, I spent most of my early career in large enterprises. So I've done cyber in big, complex organizations for a long time. Before I started my own company about 7 years ago, continued to work with a lot of different kinds of organizations, really learned how to take some of those enterprise principles and apply them to smaller settings. So how do you take the things that big companies can do and make them accessible for small companies? At the same time, small companies, different budget realities, different staffing realities. How do you get very efficient at doing cybersecurity on a shoestring? And can you apply those techniques in large enterprises? So I've been blessed to have a tremendous diversity of experience in my time. And then you said I'm currently in an advisor role at Reveal Risk now. I did sell my half of the company earlier this year, and I'm focused on that advisory role. I'm working with a couple other cybersecurity startups and really kind of taking a sabbatical at the moment while I figure out what's the right next role in cybersecurity for me. But it has been an incredible journey, and I've had a lot of fun.
It's interesting to hear you dealing with different size companies and enterprises. I know from sometimes the smaller companies I don't know if you found this over the years, but they're much higher touch and they need a lot more attention. I noticed you talked about doing it on a shoestring. I think those SME or those SMB type companies, you need to be pretty communicative and be able to handle certain situations, shall we say.
Absolutely. And every one of them comes with their own unique fingerprint, their own unique DNA, right? Sometimes you've got small companies that are overly concerned about their cyber posture. They want to go out and they want to buy everything. Sometimes you get companies that don't see themselves as a target. They don't understand why they might need cybersecurity at all. So it's important to be able to figure out which one you're dealing with and how to talk to them appropriately and communicate things in a way that doesn't inspire fear and doesn't inspire ignorance. So it's a lot of nuance.
Cool, Tim. If I'm listening to this and maybe I'm wanting to progress up to CISO level or kind of just progressing in general, like those job titles, like I said a second ago, they're big titles. You've progressed nicely. What does allow you to progress? So you've joined Lockheed Martin as an information assurance leader, and then you've really progressed into some CISO and some chief architect type roles. What do you need to do, and what did you have to do to be able to do that?
Yeah, Lockheed was great for me. Really invested a lot in me. So I had great mentors. I had great peers, great colleagues. I had a lot of folks that were almost as invested in my own development and career as I was. That's something that they did really well, was help develop technical talent, give them opportunities, and really give them chances to grow with the appropriate sponsorship. And they put a little bit of a guardrail around you to make sure that you didn't fall too far off the wagon if anything went wrong. But they gave me chances. They took a risk with me on several occasions, and I was able to rise to it. They put me through a program, got my master's degree, gave me a lot of exposure to senior leaders, and was able to make connections. And that's one thing that I do really well, is make connections between technologies, between problems, between different ways of looking at challenges. And one example of that I have come back to quite a bit, of course, Lockheed Martin, aerospace defense, they make radar. Radars use algorithms to take electromagnetic signals and tell you this is what you're seeing on the radar. So when you're looking at cybersecurity in the early 2000s, some of the same principles kept coming up. We're seeing stuff in the network. How do we understand what it is? It turns out some of those radar algorithms could be applied in cybersecurity ways to figure out what's going on in the network. So just making connections between intersections of fields and seeing things from that kind of 30 degrees off normal has really helped me in my career to come up with some innovative solutions to those hard problems. And because of that, people continue to give me jobs with more difficult problems to solve. So that's led to a lot of it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, no, that's interesting to me. Yeah, but so being there for a decade like you were, it sounded like that was like the real strong foundation to give you the springboard for the rest of what happened then.
It did. I worked almost every job in cybersecurity at the time. I was doing red teaming, blue teaming, network security, endpoint security, hardware security, software application development, governance, policy, awareness, insider threat programs, is you name it. I got a chance to at least dabble in it while I was there. And it was in an environment where people took cybersecurity very seriously. It helped. I could focus on the cybercraft. I will say, when I left that environment and went into healthcare, I learned there's this whole other side to the cybersecurity equation. And that's helping people understand why cyber matters when you don't have this big body of regulation or this big body of law that requires you to do it. So when I started at Mayo early on, I was meeting lots of the physician leadership there. And in one of those meetings, the physician leader that I was talking to sat down, he had done the math. Said, okay, here's what the average hourly rate of a physician is, times the number of patients they see per day, times the amount of time it takes them to log into their PC every time they see a patient. Tell me why passwords are worth 8 figures a year. Okay, this is not the question I was expecting when I started this conversation, but wow. Make a really good point. That question has left an incredible impression on me. You've got to be able to explain cybersecurity to non-cyber people in a way that matters. Yeah. And you can't scare them into taking it seriously, because that never works for very long. So it really helped shape my thinking from that point forward. How do you do cybersecurity in a way that makes sense for business?
That I think that's good, because it's when you're in, especially if you're hands on keyboard and you're in the weeds, and it's really easily to just not think about it from people outside of security, or people that, like you say, don't. There's always that massive. You're always trying to get the balance right between practicality and security for standard users. Because, like I say, if it's ultra secure but it's not practical, they're just, to talk in terms of how you're talking, they're just going to leave their computer open. It's getting the right balance, I think.
They're just being helpful. If you don't have to log in, you can get there faster.
Yeah. Cool. All right, Tim. So those skills as well. So you were doing red teaming, blue teaming, software. You've basically got yourself a really well-rounded skill set there. By the way, that's what we're starting to see more and more in the market. Like, we're starting to almost see 2 or even 3 roles merged into one now. Like, employers, a spec that we were getting 3 years ago for one role is now added, basically had 2 roles added into it. The salary's gone up a bit. It hasn't times by 3, but the salary has gone up a bit. But I think that well-rounded skill set is probably playing into current trends that we're seeing in hiring as well.
Yeah, I've noticed a similar trend. The one that I see frequently is combining the CISO role, or that security lead role, with the IT lead role, or the infrastructure leader. So you've got one person who's now, okay, I've got to be in charge of infrastructure and do all of the stuff that the infrastructure IT person needs, but I also am in charge of security. So I've got to do that whole side of it. And that's a big job. That's a very big job. And you need a lot of different skills. Really, you're almost balancing two sides of the same coin. One is a cost center, and one is an important protection, risk management function for the company. And you've got to balance those two things. Wearing those two hats that's why you don't have hair.
Yeah. And I think as well, to do that role effectively, I'd be interested to see what you think, Tim, but I don't think there's any other way around it apart from you just need to have experience. Like, you need to have not just experience in the commute, but you actually need a bit of life experience as well, I think, to be able to think critically and handle situations. And I don't think there's any way to fast track it. Maybe on the odd occasion, but as a general rule, I think you need to be senior.
I completely agree.
Yeah, no, definitely. Cool. All right, then, mate. So as you moved on, you've talked about when you was at Mayo Clinic. It'd be nice to hear the journey at Reveal Risk. So you've gone in there and from a startup environment got it to 5.8 million. I mean, that there'll be plenty of other people listening that would love to do that. Maybe I'm listening now, starting my own security company. Is there anything that you know now that you wish you knew back then? How hard was it? What are the pitfalls? Like, you're smiling, so I'm guessing there's quite a few.
There is, they say there's no business like show business. There's no business like running your own business. Because in addition to doing all the work that you've always done as a practitioner, suddenly you also have all these business things that you have to take care of. So I got to learn finance and legal and contracts and HR and operations. And I spent more time in the last 6 years on contracts than I would have thought possible. But it's the language of business. It's how things get done. So if I could go back and give my 7 years younger self a couple of pieces of advice, I would say, don't neglect learning those business skills early. And don't be afraid to get them off your plate. I do think one of the things that I look back and reflect on, I probably held on to some of those functions longer than I should have.
Okay.
As an entrepreneur, part of your job is to get rid of the things that somebody else can do so that you're focused on the things that only you can do. And that was a good model. I wish I had learned that 7 years ago instead of 5 years ago or 4 years ago, whenever we started down that path. So that would be the first thing that I would tell myself. The second would be that it's going to have swings. And we started the company late 2018 or really early 2019 before we had significant momentum. You might recall in 2020, there were some challenging economic and geopolitical and social things going on. It was a rough time to be a year into your own company. So that was an interesting challenge to have. Basically, corporate consulting dried up almost overnight. So our big client at the time was a Fortune 500 that we had been very deeply working with to help them build their security program as they split off from their parent company. And we were just starting to diversify our portfolio and really grow when all this chaos from COVID happened. But the one sector of the economy that didn't suffer quite as much, quite as quickly, was in the nonprofit space. And one of the things that my partner and I had decided to do when we started the company was we were going to take on some nonprofit clients at discounted rates, passion projects, investment, friend of a friend kind of things. And when the world shut down, these nonprofits had a bit of a different problem. They still had all the money they'd received from their donors previously, but they couldn't go out and do the things that they would do to spend that money in their core mission. They're not going out and having events and meeting with people and doing their thing. So they had to come up with other ways to spend their money. And fortunately, I was able to provide them with an option. Hey, you've been wanting to build a cyber program. Let's take some of this quote unquote downtime here and invest in maturing your cyber capability. And that really kept us afloat through that challenging period. And it let us leapfrog some of those programs, things that would have taken years and years to do under their normal constrained budget. Because of those unique circumstances, we were able to mature them very rapidly. So kind of a win-win all the way around, but there were some scary weeks there where are we going to make payroll? There's only the three of us on payroll at that point too. So that was a good
Yeah.
time. I learned so much.
Pretty much every entrepreneur founder I've had on has literally had a story where, they don't know whether they're going to, and some people have been like 3 or 4 days out of quite a big payroll with quite a few people, and they're like not knowing if they're gonna make it or not. Yeah, it just seems to be the absolute kind of standard operating procedure when you start out.
And we didn't have venture backing, right? We took our life savings and put it all on the line, and so there wasn't a private equity firm we could go ask for a 6-month extension from.
Yeah, okay, cool. It sounds like that non-profit kind of semi-pivot, if you like, sounds like a really intelligent move. How did you figure that out? Like, how did you know? You knew that they had money still. You knew that it needed to be spent. You knew they needed security. Like, it all sounds like really smart. But I'm like, God, how did you work that out?
Oh, I wish I could say it was some deliberate, well orchestrated strategy that we came up with. It was trial and error. We were beating the bush. We were trying to see anybody, any of our clients, any of our prospects what could we do? How could we move faster with work that was already signed? What could we do? And in those conversations with our nonprofit clients, they said, hey, we're looking for more things we can do with this. This sounds like a good fit. So it was fortuitous. We were just doing hey, we got to find work where we need the work to do. Let's go shake all the trees and see what falls out. And I think it was important to us when we started the company that we weren't just going to focus on big, high-paying corporate clients. We wanted to do some of that give back, be very intentional about it. I think it's a challenge for the industry to remember that there are entire segments of the economy that they don't have $400 an hour to spend on premium. So what would we do to help organizations that we cared about that were not in those kind of economic conditions? So that decision early on positioned us to have those conversations during COVID to discover that, hey, they did have the ability to move a little faster than they originally planned.
Yeah, no, fair play to you, mate, because it's like you can smile about it and laugh about it now, but I know what it's like when you're in those situations where you've just got to keep going and you're, like you say, trial and error, you're shaking all the trees, and so you say it with a smile on your face now, but those times, they can be really mentally testing, can't they?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They can. Yeah, they can. And I think sometimes you've just got to. I've had it a few times where nothing's going, but you just keep going. You just keep doing everything that you know is right. You just keep putting one foot in front of the other when you don't feel like it. And it is hard, and sleeping sometimes hard, and you're restless. But if you just keep going, it's because I don't know if you ever feel this, Tim, but I can actually feel the part where people get to where most people stop. Because I'm like, God, this is getting really hard now. Like, this is where, like, majority of people, and if you can get to that moment and just realize that this is the moment where everyone else stops and just power through, I think that's where special things happen. And it sounds like that's exactly what you and your partner did.
Yeah, the dam breaks, and hey, all right, we made it through.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I like that one. The dam breaks. I like that. Cool. Okay, wicked. So you did that. You started just before COVID. Everything's shut down. You've made like an adjacent pivot. You've got some traction there. That's going well. And yeah, what was the rest of the journey up to 5.8 million a year like?
Yeah, I think it's a fairly typical journey for a company, honestly. Early on, it was very much focused on me and my partner and what we were doing for our clients directly. And that scales to a point. There's only so many hours in the day, so many hours in a week. So I can only work so much. Mm-hmm. So after COVID, after we made it through that and we were stabilizing a little bit there, the next big pivot was, okay, how do we shift that model? It can't just be the two of us delivering. We've got to come up with a model where we have directors, where we have staff that can deliver under our guidance. So that was the next big pivot that we went through. We had to find good leaders, we had to find good consultants, and we had to step back a little bit. And honestly, that was hard for me because I love the cyber work. Running the business is interesting. Running cyber programs is my jam. So that pivot, I think, was easier for my partner than it was for me. But that was really the next thing we needed to do. And it's not step away completely. It's not like there's no involvement, but it's going back to, and it's a skill you learn in executive management as well. How do you get work done through others? How do you enable them to do the work? Because that's your job now, is to enable other people. And it's different when it's your company, because again, you don't have that big corporate infrastructure to fall back on, but it's a similar kind of pivot where you have to transition that model. So we adopted the framework, started using some tools to move from more delivery to more oversight and management, spent more time building the company than necessarily building individual client bases, and really started investing in developing that group of talent around us so that they could go off and do the work so that we could scale. And it was really, figuring that out took some time.
Yeah. I can imagine that, because we're really small. I'm running things over here, and I'm doing a lot myself, and it's hard work, but it's not too hard because I've done it all for a long time, and I pretty much know what I'm doing, and we've got some good relationships. But I can imagine really starting to branch out and get leaders, getting those hires wrong. I don't know if you got all the hires right, but getting those hires wrong would be quite painful at that stage. I'm knowing.
Oh yeah, every hire, when there's 10 people, one hire is 10% of your workforce. If 10% of your workforce is wrong, it's tough, and we didn't get it right all the time. At the same time, there's no perfect hire, right? So you've got everybody that you're going to hire is going to need development, is going to have some challenge, is going to have something. One or two maybe you just never encounter those challenges with, because it's just like they were destined to work with you, and those are great, but they're rarer than unicorns. So then, okay, how do we either help this person develop in their gap areas? How do we help them play to their strengths better? Or how do we help them find another opportunity that better aligns with their innate capabilities? And that's hard when you're small too, because it does feel less like a business and more like a group of friends or a group of I'm not going to use the word family, because that's such a red flag. When we say we're family here, that means something. I would use that word in a good sense, but that's not how it's usually heard. So I'll say it's like dealing with a group of friends. You have to say, sorry, you're not going to be part of my friend group anymore. That's tough. At the end of the day, we're all people. We're all dealing with the human side of the business. And that is one thing that in an enterprise you don't have. You can deal with the faceless machine differently than you deal with, oh man, I've been seeing this guy every day for 4 months, and we talk together every Friday afternoon, and we go out and have dinner occasionally, and but this isn't working out, so we've got to part company. That's a hard one. We did have, at the right time, we hit a project that was too big for us with our staff. And it was a major transformation program. Basically, we had a client that needed to completely redesign, redeploy their information security program. They had a client that had asked them to get a SOC 2, and they had dragged their feet. They took this 2-year timeline and got it down to the last 6 months. And they know that their client really was seriously going to stop paying them if they didn't have this. We got brought in to build an entire security program for them and get them through the shortest SOC 2 type 2 observation period that you can do in a 6-month window. And so this was all hands on deck. We called everybody we knew. We checked our Rolodexes. We built a team that was about 50% our entire company and 50% subcontractors, people that we trusted, people that we knew. And we brought this together. And that was really the slingshot at the right time. It was a decision. And I remember we sat down and we decided, are we going to do this? We could say no and kind of be fine and stay on the trajectory we're on. Or we could say yes, take this risk. And if it pays off, doubling the company. And it fortunately paid off. So that was a key part of that journey up to that 5.8 that we did last year. And it was exciting, and we pulled it off.
Yeah.
We're pretty confident. I don't think we would have done it if we weren't 80-90% sure we'd get there. But it's a big ask to say, come in, write us a full set of policies, procedures, practices, help us retool our staffing, redo our tool stack, and then help us maintain that under this whole new set of controls and requirements under the observation period with the auditors and get our SOC 2 Type 2 in that kind of a timeline. I'm very proud of that. And then they really liked us. They kept us around for several years in advisory and CISO. We ended up running their third-party risk program for a while. Good clients, good relationships there. But that really was a key point on that journey. As we were making this transition to, we have to be more staff delivery than partner delivery. Having that as a slingshot really was the other piece of the pie there.
Yeah, cool. I can see how that forged a nice partnership and a nice relationship. If they were going to lose a major client and you got them up to speed in 6 months, yeah, I'm imagining you guys were in favor at that point. I can see.
Yeah, they do like us there.
Cool. Cool. What at that point? What was your day like? Are you sleeping much? Are you working weekends? What's your schedule looking like at that moment in time during the business life cycle?
Yeah, at that moment, so we had set some guardrails early on because we had seen some founders that do the 80, 90 hours a week. That was never going to be doable for us. At the time that we started the company, we had young kids, we had families. We wanted to make sure that we kept ourselves available for them. So we had set some limits like, okay, I'm going to leave work early 2 days a week and go to the gym and keep that side of my life going. Going to keep at least one weekend day where I do no work. Aside from that, we worked quite a bit. So all the rest of the time got filled up pretty good. At that point, it was probably 65-ish hours a week. We've only had very few weeks where we ever went beyond that. And part of the reasoning for that is what we do is a very intellectual, very mental heavy body of work. And if you're working 80 hours, it's like you're working less than 40 because you're making bad decisions and you're doing rework and you're spinning your wheels. So we were very focused on making sure that if we were spending the time, it was valuable time. And even if there was a lot of pressure, even if there was a lot of urgency, a lot of things that needed to be done, if we got past that point of productivity, you're going backwards.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit counterintuitive. You read a lot about hustle culture and working 80, 90, 100 hours a week, and nose to the grindstone, 2-3 side hustles, all of that. I'm sure there are some people that can do it. I'm not one of them. I don't think most people should do that because you make measurably worse decisions when you're functioning without sleep, when you're letting your health and your eating slide. And so we were very deliberate. We're charging our clients a lot for our time. They should get the value from that time. It shouldn't be hours that we're just awake because we had more coffee. It should be productive. It should be delivering value. So 65, 70 was pretty much the tops. And honestly, most weeks we didn't get that. We were 45, 50, and that was pretty consistent.
Thanks, Tim, because I'm normally making notes here so I can make the pod better, but I'm actually making notes here now for myself as well because some of this stuff is really useful because I've tried it. I've tried it where I go, okay, I'm just going to work every day for as long as I can, and I can get through the first weekends, and like I'm on day 8, 9, I'm fine. Then I can get through the next and the next, and I get up to 3 or 4 weekends of working straight through, and I can feel it. Like I say, I'm not where I should be. I'm probably a little bit shorter with the team than I should be. If anything goes wrong, I start to feel really resentful of the business and get really annoyed when I think if I'd have taken every week, I think, I'm hearing what you're saying. And it's not, I'm literally writing down what you're telling me the max you can do and still maintain it. So you think probably optimal if you're pushing as hard as you want to push, don't ever go above 65, would you say?
I wouldn't. That's my limit. I think there's probably people that can do a little bit more, some probably a little bit less. I do think it's trial and error. I like the approach of, hey, I'm going to see what can I do. And then, okay, now I know what that high watermark is. And I think there's two of them. There's this is what I can sustain, and here's what I can surge to.
Yeah.
And those can be two different numbers, and maybe they're wildly different. I don't know. I have a small size, but actually it was when I was at Mayo, one of the physicians up there came and he was giving this talk to a lot of the different groups at Mayo. We gave it to the entire Office of Information Security. And it was about burnout and work effort and just, hey, and they're physicians, right? They're dealing with people's lives. They take this very seriously. This is how much you can work before you start making bad decisions. Don't go past that mark. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So once you figure that out, stick to it.
Yeah.
And reevaluate it because it will change over time. I think I can probably do more now because I've been focused on health and eating better and things than I could in my early 30s. So I've reevaluated since then. In my early 30s, 45 was I would start making dumb decisions at about 40.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
So
no, it's really
now I can get to 60 and still be okay. So it's something you can change and grow over time.
Yeah, you're right. I think that key word that you said for me is that sustainability piece, because I can do every day short term, but it's like I can't do it long term. I'm gonna get annoyed. I'm gonna do something wrong. Like you say, it's like, what's the point? You think you're getting an extra. You might be gaining something short term temporarily, but then if you work poorly in 2 weeks' time or a week's time, when you're at the end of a 20, 25, 30-day stretch of working every day, what's the point? You're just going to give it back at the other end. So, yeah, taking that balanced approach. But, yeah, no, I've done the trial and error, definitely. And it's, yeah, I know. I think I'm probably not too dissimilar from you. I think the 60, 65 is probably okay. I do like my weekends, though. If I have the weekend, like, I come back in and I'm hungry again.
Yeah, you got to figure out what recharges you, what gives you back that energy.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, with that SOC 2, you reminded me of PCI DSS in Q4 when you're talking about that client for SOC 2. They had 2 years to do it. They left it all for the last 6 months. It's every pen testing company in the whole of the US in Q4. It's like it just goes berserk. Everyone wants contractors. It's like, why can't these clients just stick to timelines? But they just can't.
It is. It's one of those things. Yeah, I can do the pen test, or we can push one more feature to production. It turns out the feature to production almost always wins.
Yeah, cool. So you talked about the optimizing the hours. You've obviously taken a risk. You've given us loads, by the way. But is there anything else that you learned on that business journey that you know now that you wish you knew back then that could help me or help the listeners?
I underestimated how important contract language can be.
Okay.
It's one of those, boy, you hope you never have to fall back to the contract. And fortunately, we had very few times where we ever did. But getting the contract language right is important. And the one thing that just kept coming back to me was on our insurance renewal every year. They kept adding more and more questions. Do all of your contracts say this? Do all of your contracts say that? And because all of our contracts with the big clients require us to keep a certain amount of insurance, it was one of those dependencies that just kept coming back. It was one of those that I wish I could have said, okay, we solved that and we're done and could walk away from it, but it just kept coming back up and back up. So don't neglect the contract language and get the terms that you want whenever you can. Don't blindly sign your clients' contracts.
Yeah. And do you know what? For everyone listening, I bet that's harder to stick to than you think, because I'm imagining that client's come on board. This is an opportunity to catapult the business, like you said, to the next level. You've got a staff up, you've got contractors, you're tapping into your own network, like all that going on, and it's a risk. It paid off now. You didn't know it was going to pay off at the time. I'm imagining to sit there and read a contract cover to cover when you've got so much going on, so much to do, probably takes quite a lot of discipline.
Yeah, it's not the fun part of the job, but it is one of those things that only the partner, only the right person in the organization can do.
Yeah, cool. I was going to say that must be quite a nice thing about starting out with partners. I was going to say that was your responsibility, basically.
Yeah, that was one I spent more time on. I wouldn't say I did every single one. In any partnership, of course, you all do a little bit of everything, but clear definition of duties, that one was more mine.
Cool. All right, my friend. Wicked. All right, Tim. And so now then you're advising other companies and tapping into the things that we spoke about, plus other things to help other folks in the community, yeah?
Yeah, I do a little bit of advisory. This is a fantastic time to be in cybersecurity product. Rise of generative AI is going to be incredibly disruptive, both as a need for cybersecurity, but also as an enabler for things that we're trying to do in cybersecurity. So it's been really neat to get kind of behind the curtain with a couple of these startups that are just doing some mind-blowingly cool stuff and be able to provide some of the benefits of my years to these guys to really shape some cool stuff. And I wish I could go into more detail about some of it, but it's still all early, very stealth, but it's very cool. It's very in the industry that there are some terrific opportunities to take tasks that are hard and make them a lot easier going forward. Of course, there's always the risk, right? You swing the pendulum too far and you trust AI, and then you end up submitting things that are gibberish. So you can't go all the way there, but getting that sweet spot. And I think it's back to that 80-20 rule. 20% of the AIs can do 80% of the interesting work, and then leaves you to do the last 20% with the 80% of your time that it's saved. So
yeah, cool. Yeah, man. You know what? You're so right about that, because when I think about the companies that have used us for hiring through all different types of conditions, it's security product firms. They seem to be able to withstand any conditions as well. Probably the recurring revenue piece helps.
Very resilient, very, very market favored. They like that recurring revenue model, software subscription, security subscription. And once a security tool is in place, and I ran into this a lot as a consultant, because one of the things I do as a consultant is I help organizations to rationalize their tool portfolio. So a lot of companies overbuy, the fact. So I really like to help them see, here's where you've got 3 tools doing the same thing. Get one, and then you save one, and then you take the money from the third one and deploy it on something over here where you had a gap, and everybody wins, right? Except the 2 vendors that no longer get
except them,
clients. So sometimes I was not so popular with the tool vendors as a result of that. But the reality of it was, for a lot of these companies, once the tool is in-house, it's really hard to make the argument to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Because it's doing something.
Yeah.
We can't not do something in cybersecurity.
Yeah.
So once it's in, you've got to fight to get rid of it.
Yeah. No, good. Hell of a business model. But yeah, and like I said, there's plenty of them doing out there some great stuff as well, like you say, Tim, and there's some really good, really cool stuff going on. Mm-hmm. Really cool. Cool. All right, my friend. As we come to a close here, I used to say what book has had the biggest impact on your career. Could be security, could just be like a book that's made you the best version of yourself, but it could be book, it could be podcast, it could be content you're consuming online, anything that springs to mind that's had a positive effect on you.
I read a lot, so that could be a long list. I will say, going back to the earlier discussion about how do you get somewhere in cybersecurity, how do you advance, a book that really helped me early in my career was the original Hacking Exposed.
Okay.
And the reason for that was because it took all of this stuff that I was learning about port scans and malware and how to exploit systems. It systematized it. It presented it as a methodology, as a way of thinking through how would you approach this target in a thoughtful way. And it gave me a framework for thinking about cybersecurity that was not purely, we have to do everything all of the time. It was a way of thinking about it sequentially. It was a way of thinking about it in terms of measured reward opportunity cost. And it just turned on some lights for me that helped me very early make some good choices that I think helped me out a lot.
Cool.
Big fan of that series. And of course, those guys have gone on to do some of the most incredible things in cybersecurity. George and Stuart to Cylance, CrowdStrike. It's hard to argue with it.
Yeah, cool. All right, my friend. Cool. Thanks for I've enjoyed it today. It's been a nice chat and it's gone quick. We got off to a bit of a slow start, which is probably my fault for losing my microphone, but it's been good. I've enjoyed it. Do you think we've about smashed it? I think we did a good job.
All right. It's been a lot of fun. Again, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. This has been a lot of fun.
But thanks again, mate, and nice to see you.
Likewise.